My bangs look like shit today. I didn't comb them before I took after I took my shower though, so that's probably why. They haven't been tamed properly. Well, that didn't hardly give me anything. Yeah, that's not a lighter. This is a straw. Yeah, I don't know. We're just waiting for some people to gather up so we can hang out and have some conversations. I mean, I don't expect to stay as late as I normally do today. It's already super late at night, so I'm expecting to just maybe spend a couple of hours with you guys. I don't even know if I'm gonna spend this time in the light either. Like, I might choose to just fucking. You know what? I do have a candle right there. Part of me is like, I want to turn the lights off and light a candle, and it'll be a little bit, cooler in here in terms of like the atmosphere. But then part of me is like, oh well, nobody can see your cool background if I put a candle on. Love the flag? Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I like it too. That's why I've got one behind me. But yeah, I like to represent openly that. Well, I like people to know that either I'm queer or I'm an ally. They can't necessarily tell all the time just by looking at me, but I like them to know that there's a good chance of one or the other just because of the flag that I have behind me. It's a good way of indicating allyship or in-group similarity. Do you and Paul have the same audience? Because it seems like they don't. Do you and Paul have the same audience? Because it seems like they don't. What? No, me and Paul don't have the same audience. There's a pretty small cross-section of people who watch both DFF and Phoebe's content regularly. I'm actually very proud to say that 90% of my audience doesn't watch any other, there's a big chunk of my audience that just straight up doesn't watch a whole lot of other political content besides me, and then there's a greater percentage of my audience that watches larger lefty content creators, but not necessarily the DFF guys. I would say it's around 10%. As far as like regular watchers from that community. What do you think about Destiny? I think he's wildly misguided when he says that the Democrats and more center lefty kind of types, like politically involved people on the relative American left, I think he's completely out of touch and wildly off base when he says that those types of people need to cut off the broader left because we're not a reliable voting demographic, and because the things we say are just too hot for the working class. The things we say are just too wild for everybody out there working normal jobs and going about their normal lives, even though the things we advocate for are largely supported by the vast majority of Americans. So there's this idea that the reason why, and essentially the reason I have such a problem with it is not even because I look at it as some kind of insult towards leftists. I really don't give a shit about that. What I care about is the just patently obvious wrongness in the premise that leads to that idea. Because the idea that leads to someone thinking that is that somehow leftist inaction is responsible for Kamala losing, when the fact of it is, Kamala lost the last election because Joe Biden was doomed to lose the last election because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris governed like Republicans. And nobody on the left and nobody in the center wants to vote for a Republican. So you weren't able to get the DNC. You weren't able to get a lot of normal DNC voters, some of who went and voted for Trump, some of whom just didn't flat out vote last year, and some of who voted to the left of their DNC choice and voted for the Green Party or something like that, or the Libertarian Party, which ironically is now to the left of the Democratic Party as well. So I think he's completely fucking misguided in his idea that that is somehow going to have some kind of positive effect on Democratic electoral results in the future. I had this muted the whole time. What were you saying? Get banned, bitch. That's what I was saying. Doesn't matter. He got the whole country. Move on. I mean, it's 4 years. Dude, just relax. Who are you arguing with, Amber? Who are you talking to? What's going on in your brain? Make sure you guys hit that like button, by the way. Bro, you can just say faggot in here. I don't ban people just for saying things like faggot, you know. Nor are you going to completely destroy my sense of self-worth and pride merely by calling me a faggot. I've been called way worse by way smarter people. Streaming quality is way better than usual tonight. I have no idea why. Unless, it's because my door is open, and so I'm actually getting a way better connection to my phone over the Wi-Fi, which is good. How is there 138 people watching at 2 a.m.? Oh, YouTube's algorithm loves me until everybody report brigades me. That's the thing. You know, as long as I can somehow eventually figure out a way to get past that, as long as I can eventually get past these people's completely dork need to, I don't know, it's such a stupid anti-free speech hypocritical position, but so many of the people that I argue with in here, once they get sick of arguing with me because they realize I'm way smarter than them and way more capable of arguing for my positions than they are, way more confident than they are, they turn to the coward's tool of last resort, basically, which is the report button. And YouTube's algorithm fucking loves me right up until that moment. Speaking of which, make sure you guys hit that like button because it really does help. Every single time you hit that like button, it's basically telling YouTube, hey, send more people to this lady's channel because she is making good content and she deserves it. So you guys hit that like button. If you've been sitting around watching for 10 minutes, come on, you'll like it. Even if you want to bitch and disagree with me and complain and all that nonsense, I don't give a shit. Hit the like button. You hate me? Get some more people in here that can argue against me. You like me? Get some more people in here who can agree with me. Well, of course, honestly, if you like me, you should just be hitting the like button anyway. Come on now. Also, if you want to make sure your question gets read, consider sending a super chat. I do read every single one, as long as it doesn't violate TOS. So I'm not going to advocate for the murder of an American politician over super chat just because you pay me $5. But failing that, I'll say most things. Well, you are so not smart at all. You just told us all how to ruin your channel. Delusion is a bad look. Oh man, you have no idea how YouTube works. You have no idea how YouTube works. YouTube's terms of service and its content guidelines are not the same motherfucking thing. And I have done nothing. I have never done a single thing on my channel that has broken the terms of service. The content guidelines, community guidelines, maybe. But the punishment for breaking those is not a strike on your channel. The punishment for breaking those is having your content age restricted. And if you look back at my channel, there are plenty of my streams that have gotten age restricted, and I don't give a shit. Some of them I can't even monetize. They're so hardcore age restricted. And I don't give a shit. Most of my income comes from super chats and gifts and things like that anyway, so. Besides, if they hear me describe the report process and they hear, ooh, let's fucking report this bitch, then they are just proving that they are exactly the type of people I was accusing them of being. Weak-minded, limp-wristed little bitches who are completely incapable of actually having a conversation with a strong, confident trans woman. Bro, living on that froyo diet, man, I wish you were right. Frankly, I wish you were right. No, I cannot afford to live on a froyo diet, my friend. I don't even know if I've ever actually had froyo, come to think of it. Let me think here. I've had frozen custard, I've had ice cream, I've had soft serve, so I've had the major types of ice cream. But have I ever had froyo? I really don't think I have, now that I think about it. Like, I'll cop to all kinds of fattening shit, you know? Cakes and pies, cakes and pies. But froyo? Really? Can I just ask, what about me said froyo? Just curious. Like, I get that you don't know that much about me. You're going off on a limb here. You know, you kind of have to exercise some guesswork, right? But I'm curious about what the mental process was. How are you doing, and your partner and lovely? Well, I am good. Yes, we are all good. We are all doing amazing. And we could honestly be doing a lot better. There is some family stuff going on in the background, but I don't want to talk about it here. It's just going to get me down. It's just going to make me depressed, so. This man hides behind a fake confidence by projecting pettiness and arrogance, which strives from a lack... Oh, boy. Man, you're breaking one of the rules right now. Readability, you need to work on it, okay? Let's go through this comment. Remember, as I'm reading this comment, I'm the stupid one. This man hides behind a fake confidence by projecting pettiness and arrogance, which misspelled pettiness, by the way, which strives from a lack of KF, self-belonging, so the ego pushes more out than you can receive inward. That comment, everything I just read there, was gibberish. That's what we call nonsense, friends. That's what we call a giant, steaming pile of verbal turds. I'm not even going to ennoble that with a response. Fucking word salad, bro. Mental health is a serious problem. Oh, dude, you need look no further than the Republican movement in its modern day to see that mental illness is a very serious problem. I mean, think about it. Half the politically involved and voting people in America right now are mostly currently involved in a campaign to now, like, convince everybody of a completely different narrative than what they've been pushing for the last 8 years in regards to this Epstein shit. Not 8 years, but the last, 5 or 6 years, it's been one consistent narrative from the right and honestly from most of the left on the Epstein shit. Pretty much everybody in America agreed that it needed to come out. That was until it became very patently obvious that Donald Trump's name would be on those files, that Donald Trump associates would be on those files, and that a lot of illicit activity was taking place on that island and on those planes. So now it's become a big old issue of political contention, and now there's a bunch of Republicans running around that don't know how to feel about it. But most of them right now are still somehow managing to make excuses for Donald Trump at a time when he is actively doing everything he can to draw attention away from something that he said was of utmost importance. Remember this. I need conservatives to hold the president they claim to love to account for this shit. Blind loyalty is not an American trait. You know what's an American trait? Pointing out when your leaders do something fucked. And you know what's fucked? Going around for the last 5 years saying the Epstein files are the biggest deal, that we need to release them, that it's a horrible thing that Joe Biden hasn't released them, that this is going to change the face of American politics, and that it's of utmost importance, right? 5 years of that rhetoric, 5 years of campaigning like that, only to turn around and say, it's not that important. You need to move on. People are going crazy. What a heel turn. How do you guys still take him seriously after that? And then you get shit like today's little summit in Alaska regarding the Ukraine-Russia conflict, right? So we've got this summit that was supposed to do major things. If you listened to Trump and you believed Trump as to what he was saying in the lead up of this was going to lead to massive progress, massive fucking, this was going to lead to a peace deal. And now his rhetoric has changed again. Yet again, the narrative is shifting, the ever-shifting narrative of Donald John Trump. Now we see that his line on this is, well, there's no deal until there's a deal. They were very productive talks, but we didn't achieve a ceasefire today. MAGA in shambles, bro. MAGA in shambles. MAGA completely in shambles. Stay off the drugs, bro. You say as you're on a drug. You realize the internet is a drug? You see, a lot of people want to come at me judgmental and shit using the American definition and preconception of what a drug is. And according to Americans, drugs are anything that gets you high or fucked up that's not booze, the internet, booze, the internet, tobacco, caffeine, a couple of different over-the-counter stimulants. I would say there's like 5 to 50, I would say there's between 10 and 15 drugs that we do all the fucking time that we have no problem with. We have absolutely no problem with it. It's worse or better, depending on your perspective, than just not having a problem with it. We love this shit. Americans love their coffee. More Americans drink coffee than, like, Americans are more united by coffee than we are by any other beverage. You're more likely to get into a conversation with somebody by asking them about their tastes in coffee than you are by asking them about their tastes in beer or alcohol in general, or their tastes in herbal teas or anything like that. Even a conversation about water is not going to go as far as a conversation about coffee. And coffee, while not itself a drug, is the administration method for America's most popular drug, which is caffeine. That cricket chirping is the background. What's going on now? That cricket chirping in the background has paid for its crimes. You have tortured it enough. Dude, release him. I can't believe you would torture a cricket. You guys, like, man, this is like a bunch of city kids that are listening to somebody that lives out in the country, then experiencing what it's like to be outside at night for the first time in their lives. Listen to it for a second. You guys ain't ever heard this shit? Listen. Oh, that's beautiful. But yeah, how people continue to defend Trump at this late, great date and time is utterly beyond me. I think the man has shown himself to be as clearly a fascist as one can be. I think the man has shown himself to be as uninterested in actual proper governance as one can be, and still ostensibly remain a politician. But I guarantee you, for the rest of his fucking presidency, there will always be at least 20% of voting eligible Americans who are going to fucking support him no matter what. And you know, Trump talked about this way back in 2015 or 2014, something like that. He was talking about how if he ever ran for, or I can't remember if it was after he started his campaign or before. But he basically said, and I might be combining two different quotes, come to think of it, but I'm just going to do it. Fuck it. He said at one point that if he ever ran for office, he would run with the Republican Party because their voters are dumb as fuck. Their voters are dumb and misinformed, and they have very predictable desires and interests. They have very predictable patterns of rhetoric that appeals to them. And so he said he would run for the Republican Party. And if he did, that he would manage to capture their hearts so well that he would be able to go out in the middle of Times Square in broad daylight and shoot someone and get away with it. He wouldn't be arrested. He wouldn't be charged. He would just get away with it. And he would find a way. And that is proven true. There is nothing Trump can do, up to and including being basically confirmed as being intimately involved with the personal life and business dealings of a billionaire leader of a pedophile ring that helped billionaires and rich, powerful people all over this planet secure underage people for sexual purposes and slavery. Now that, like, we know that now. It's pretty much established, right? We don't know for sure. Like, we haven't seen the unredacted documents, but there's way too many pictures. The association runs way too fucking deep, and he's got way too many weird things that he said to Epstein and that Epstein said to him for there to be no connection. You're telling me he said all the weird shit he said to Epstein in letters, but there's no connection to him being involved in Epstein's fucking giant pedophile island? I refuse to believe that. I refuse to believe that. So there's nothing that Trump can do at this point. There's nothing that they can... There is no... How do I put it? There's no extreme to which he can go that these people will not follow him down. Not all of them. Like I said, I think that there's like a schism, right? There's like a schism evolving in MAGA right now. And I think that there are people on certain factions of the right that are going to come away with this with the right perspective. Like, yeah, Trump wasn't the great white hope. He was just, just another Republican, just another fucking conservative, just another authoritarian or whatever. I know that those people are out there. But you also have to know, just having as much fucking history and experience as we've had with Trump at this point, you have to know at this point, man, there's always going to be a core little group of MAGA cultists who aren't going to leave it alone for anything. By the way, make sure you guys hit that like button. If you haven't hit it already, make sure you guys hit that like button. It really does help. Every single time you hit that like button, it's another chance to send the stream out to even more people, which increases the quality of your viewing pleasure by increasing the number of people that can engage in the chat. Love your top. Thank you, Whispers. I appreciate that. And if anybody else wants to send a super chat, consider doing so. It is the best way to make sure that your question gets read or that your comment gets read. I do read every single one as long as it doesn't violate TOS. I don't practice Santeria. I ain't got no crystal ball. And I had $1,000, but I spent it all. You got to let go of the whole Trump thing. I mean, he has never been anti-gay. He is actually the only president to go into office supporting gays. Not even Obama did. I mean, Amber, I talk about Trump because he's a current events political news figure that's going to be in the news for the next 4 years. I think he's I think every American president is well worthy of criticism and critique, disagreement and debate, all those wonderful things, right? I think it is an American's national duty, I guess you could call it. I think it's definitely one of our national pastimes, but I also think it's like a duty of ours to criticize and call out the shitty politicians in our midst. I agree. Trump should be criticized and critiqued, but the way they went after him versus the way they went after Biden is completely disproportional. Let's be honest about that. Well, they That might be true of them, Amber, but I understand if you just found my channel tonight and you don't know this, but I have been critical of Biden the whole time. I voted for Biden in 2020, but I pretty much immediately regretted it about like 2 months later when he signed like the biggest Raytheon deal that had ever happened. He literally signed like a landmark defense package that saddled our military budget with a bunch of fucking new debt, a bunch of new justification for spending. So I pretty much started my Biden critique like 2 months into the Biden presidency, and I've been like critical of Biden the whole time. As far as like the broader media, like the mainstream media and everything, and the response to Biden versus Trump, of course they're more reactive to Trump than they are to Biden because Trump knows how to play the media. Trump is a way more media savvy figure, and not only that, but Trump is a way more uh, exciting figure. I hate to say that, but credit where it's due. Trump is a way more enticing, kind of exciting figure, just from the political theater standpoint, right? What is Joe Biden? He is an old man in his 80s that is clearly going through the early stages, or perhaps the moderate stages of frontotemporal dementia. He's very fucking clearly physically ailing in other ways. He has cancer. Probably had cancer at the beginning of his presidency, or probably had markers for the development of it. So what we have in Biden is perhaps one of the least qualified men to ever hold the office. Literally, if you wanted to make an argument about the ineffectiveness of democracy, look no further than Joe Biden. If democracy wins us Joe Biden, then maybe democracy doesn't work. Now, I don't believe that. I think that direct democracy, that can work. I think the democracy requires an educated populace, and I think that an educated populace requires the leaders to vote in better policy and to decide on better policy. And so it's just kind of like a clusterfuck. You have to get a giant movement in, you have to get a giant movement of people in there to change it, and then change it all at once. Otherwise, there's no hope of like doing enough things to get it changed across the board. But anyway. Yes, I can play guitar. And if you guys want, maybe here in a few minutes, I'll end this stream and we can do a little busking. You guys want to hear something tragic? This is sad. I don't even know how to share this news, to be honest with you. The horrible news is that I'm almost out of dabs. I saw a dude get killed today on a motorcycle. What the fuck? Zero factor? That's horrible. I'm sorry. Even more sorry for the person who died. What an awful way to go. What an awful way to go. I do have a sense of humor, and that's hilarious. Don't be. It was meant to be. What do you think I do here, ultimately, the goal of this channel is to entertain people. I don't know if I'm the most effective working on it. I'm essentially teaching myself the profession, so. But I've always been told that I have a really good deadpan, so I try to break that out when I can. Because I can just say the most unhinged shit, completely straight-faced. Do you think if Trump was caught selling government secrets to enemy nations, would that be enough to get him arrested for treason, or would he just get away with it? Honestly, at this point, Matt Blank, I don't fucking know. Because if you'd asked me 10 years ago if an American president who fostered an insurrection on the Capitol, a giant, whatever you want to call it, but a giant, massive sit-in kind of protest with a guillotine outside and lots of people with guns and shit like that, whatever. I get that opinions are mixed about that event, but I consider it an insurrectionary attempt. And if you'd asked me 10 years ago, a president is going to do an insurrectionary attempt in about 5 or 6 years, and what do you think is going to happen to that president in the aftermath of that insurrectionary attempt? And I would ask a couple of questions, but after like question 3, I would be like, you know what? Actually, none of these questions even matter. Because the more I think about it, I don't think my answer is going to change. They would go to jail. They would go to jail. You would have to go to jail. You can't just let somebody do that and go free and think they can just take over democracy because they don't like the result. And I would have thought that I was in the right. I would have thought that I was 100% correct, that was the American way to feel about it. The events of 2021 lead me to reconsider. Genuinely. Sure, they were able to impeach him, but they weren't able to get him charged. Or actually, I guess they were able to get him charged, but I don't even remember if they were able to get him charged on that. Were they? Is he a felon because of January 6th? Because I thought he ended up actually being a felon for some other shit, but maybe I'm misremembering. But the point is, he didn't have to serve any prison time. He got saddled with a felony at some point, but he didn't have to serve any prison time. At this point, I don't know. At this point, I genuinely do not know, Matt. I have no idea. I would love to say that, yes, he would be arrested and that the American security apparatus would turn against them, but I don't know, dude. I don't know. And I don't get what it is that Trump has on everybody that would lead to that. Actually, I do. Trump's an Epstein informant. That's why he's got so much sway. That's why he's able to get so much of his fucking political will achieved. That cock-sucking son of a bitch. How am I the first person to make this connection? How am I the first person to point this out? I'm sorry, y'all. I'm really having like an epiphany moment right now. The more I think about this shit, the deeper it goes. Trump might be one of the few people besides Ghislaine Maxwell or whatever her name is that actually has client lists and shit. How much you want to bet? So I notice you're still not playing guitar. I will tell you guys what, if someone donates $5 or more, we will break the guitar out on a separate stream. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel and everything. Make sure you're subbed so you can catch me on the next one. Because if we get $5 or more and somebody says in that super chat, play the guitar, I'm more than willing to do it. But we will start a new stream so that we can focus on that. Do you acknowledge at least that you don't pass like at all? Well, that doesn't seem to be the case. Honestly, like that just does not seem to be my experience. Sorry. I don't know if I pass super well over like the camera in its current settings and everything, but honestly, I think that like just basing it off of personal experience and the pronouns people use for me and the way they interact with me, it seems like most people IRL, depending on how I'm dressed, recognize that I'm a woman and really don't question it until I open my mouth, you know? When I reveal that I don't voice train, then suddenly people get weird about it. Trans medicalists get angry. Anti-trans people, transphobes get even more angry. Excuse me. Oh man, if that's how you want to be TF2 Dank, I think we can find somebody to escort you to a new place for you to be. I'm here to entertain, yes, and if someone likes what I have to offer, then they can provide me with remuneration for that, or they can deal with the free shit, which is sitting here listening to me yapping. But you can go watch my other busking streams and see that I negotiate requests. I often end up playing for like an hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes, because people just keep on donating and keep on donating. There are actually 3 songs in the bank if we end up doing another busking stream, but that's the thing. My rule in here, if you want me to break out the guitar, I don't think it's unfair for me to ask, bust out $5. It's how it worked when I was living on the road and busking. The fucking crowd completely dries up and nobody, like, there's no, like, the energy shifts and people are just not feeling it. Well, Bro, you're like the third person to offer this one-way flight to Palestine, and it's stupid. I'm not even going to engage with you people anymore, because I engaged with the first 2 that did it and said I would be super willing to do it. But every single time I get an offer like that, I talk to that person and I give them the legitimate. Here's the difference, right? Here's the thing that I'm picking up on. I am real. What you see here is what you get. I really am a crazy queer hippie that fucking loves nature and weed and talking shit and playing guitar and advocating for people's rights. That's me. That's really me. No matter where you put me, no matter what environment you put me in, no matter who you put me around, that's what you're going to get. With you guys, you like to perpetrate like you're something else online, when in reality your life is probably sadder than mine is. So you say this shit like you come to me with this offer, right? Oh, I'll sponsor a multiple thousands of dollars journey for you. No, you won't. You don't have multiple thousands of dollars just sitting around for you to waste on trying to get some trans YouTuber killed because you have a complete misunderstanding of the dynamic in Palestine. But I'll tell you what I told the other 2 dorks. If I did go to Palestine, as long as I framed the event correctly, I could do a fucking queer liberation and Palestinian liberation solidarity soup kitchen. I could do that. There's no reason I couldn't do that. In fact, I would be in way more danger from the IDF just like taking off with my shit that I bring to donate, or like bombing me or sending a missile at my camp or whatever. I would be way more in danger from the fucking IDF than I would be from Hamas. And the first dude that offered to pay for security and everything. So I think that dude might have added me on Reddit. If anybody's going to take me on a trip to Palestine, it's the dude who offered to pay for my flight there and back if I make it, and offered to pay for anything I wanted to donate and everything else. And if I remember correctly, that dude is actually one of those people that has chatted in here enough that I actually kind of believe them when they say they're rich, but they haven't hit me back up yet, so. Yeah, like the stream if you haven't already. Like the stream if you haven't already. I can't believe people got that up in arms about my my offer to change the nature of our stream if somebody just wants to donate. Like, I don't think it's that big an ask, you know? Different strokes. And I say that because I've put that out there a number of times, and it's always been well received. So. I mean, yeah, the brand Bud Light was hurt from their association with Dylan Mulvaney, but Anheuser-Busch was not. Not really, not long term. In fact, it's ironic, right? Sales plummeted for Bud Light, but they went right up for a number of other Anheuser-Busch brands. See, I'm from Missouri. I'm from the state where Anheuser-Busch operates, and as a result, I used to look at that corporation as kind of an example of my little personal pride for the state I grew up in. And so I keep up to date with it. I know what goes on. I know how many brands they own. You're probably drinking Anheuser-Busch beer if you're drinking a beer right now. Probably. Actually, I think it's InBev now, but still. Let's be real, losing nearly $4 billion in value of your top selling brand is not what any company would consider no big deal. Well, my question would be how did other Anheuser-Busch brands do in that same year? Or in that same fiscal period even? That would be a really good number if we could find that, right? Because if they lost $8 billion in Bud, but they gained $12 billion distributed across Michelob and, you know, Anheuser branded and, I hesitate to just start listing off random beers because I forget which ones have been bought and sold by Anheuser over the years. But like if you're drinking like Busch, you know, or Miller Lite or whatever, you know, I would wonder if those losses were made up for by gains in any of their other brands. Corona is owned by Anheuser. Yep. What do you drink? I don't. I don't drink beer. I've always thought beer tastes really nasty. To be honest with you, I have always thought beer tastes disgusting. The only kind of beer I can remotely stand to drink, as far as like traditional beers, is like Michelob Ultra. I'll drink those. You know, if that's the only booze you got on hand and that's what we gotta drink, I guess, you know, I guess I'm glad I'm not drinking Bud Light. Let me put it that way. You know, but I'm not happy about not happy about the affair. I would way rather drink Twisted Tea or Seagram's or fucking what is that one vodka company that does them? The Smirnoff Ices or whatever. I can't remember. But I like those, like, what do they call them? Like cheerleader beer, basically. Wine coolers, that kind of thing. That's my gig. When I do drink, I very rarely drink anymore though, because I had a bad problem with binge drinking for a while, and it's just one of those things that once I keep a handle on it, I try to keep a handle on it for as long as I possibly can, because. And at this point in my life, I'm really proud to say that I have drank to drunkenness probably 3 or 4 times since my last bad binge drinking episode, and I haven't followed up any of those big, one night binges with like week long, okay, I'm buying a bunch of booze now and getting drunk every night this week. So that's cool. I think I'm starting to learn some moderation when it comes to booze, which is cool. Yes, clearly I like sugar. Yeah. But, if you're going to say that from the standpoint of a beer drinker, that's pretty rich because beer is like full of calories. Beer is literally a grain beverage, so it's like massive. It's if I'm drinking calories in the form of sugar with my cheerleader beer, then you are definitely drinking calories with your shit. Alrighty, we gotta refill our butane lighter. Gonna vent the air out of it. Alrighty. Okay, that should be enough. And now, there we go. Whee! What's your piece that long? Oh, it's literally exactly what it looks like. It's a long stainless steel straw, like you'd buy in a pack of straws or something like that. And yeah, that's what I use as my dab rig, because it's old reliable. What can I say? It's durable. It's you know, degradation resistant. It's not nearly as heavy or bulky as a lot of dab rigs are. Doesn't take as long to heat as a lot of dab rigs do. Now, it also doesn't retain heat as well as a lot of dab rigs do. So it's kind of a janky way to do it. But ultimately, I prefer doing dabs out of these because I find that I don't cook the dabs as often. And what I mean by that is I don't, like, you want your dabs to vaporize. You want them to be hit with the exact right temperature or under them, but you don't want to hit it so fucking, like, there's certain things you can do when you're hitting a dab where you can like ignite it for a second and then you end up getting a little bit of like dab smoke instead of dab vapor, which is no good. And I don't know, I just don't find myself, and two, you don't want it too hot, right? You don't want the dab to be too hot, which I do. I have that problem when I'm hitting like a regular piece, like a titanium or whatever dab rig. I will often end up getting my piece way too motherfucking hot for what I'm trying to do, and that's just not a fun experience. Like a dab that's like twice the heat it needs to be as it goes into your body, because you're just not very good at heating up those big giant elements or whatever. So I'll tell you what, the superior way to do a dab though, just genuinely and real, like for real, is in a bong, like a tower bong or something like that, with one of those glass bowls at the bottom. Wait, I just realized, is this like a literal set that you just have outside? Like, is it just a wall? Oh, well, It's not exactly a set that I have outside, but it's an outbuilding that I converted for use basically as a streaming environment. And I like some of my other housemates also have like an interest in doing something with this little spot, so I want to ask them about it. But I want to, once the channel starts taking off even more, I want to start putting some of the money that I earn in the channel towards fixing this place up, getting it connected to the electrical grid here on the property, um, maybe even connecting it to our water supply and everything. That way I can have like an office space and a streaming space and everything. I'll basically have like a combined set office productivity area that I'm allowed to smoke in, right? Because I don't talk about that often for obvious reasons, but I do. I have a kid, so I don't. No parent should be smoking in front of their kids. I think that that's just fucking, common sense type of shit. So we don't smoke inside. But in the winter or in the super hot of summer, it can be kind of like obnoxious and horrible to sit outside at a time like the hot ass summer or the middle of winter. Of course, in the hot ass summer, eventually it gets too hot even in here, where you can actually use you can use some physical principles to your advantage. You can actually get it cooler inside, even like relatively unelectrified space. Like all I have out here is like an extension cord with some stuff plugged to it right now. But with just a few physical principles, I can cool it down in here really quickly, or keep it cooler throughout the day. And but even like during like the hottest summer months, like the really hot weather shit we were going through here a while back, man, it's awful in here during those times. You can see me do a few really miserable streams back then, and it's just like patently obvious how bad it is. But yeah, it's not exactly a set, but maybe it will be here in the near future. Maybe it will be. If it does become one, I really want to figure out a way to clean this thing up really well and to make this more of a focus shot. To make this more of a focus of the shot. Because I think it's a cool little adds character kind of thing. But I also think that without the right add-ons, it ends up looking kind of trashy. So I'm just going to have to figure it out. BB versus Stone Cold. I wouldn't fight Stone Cold, dude. Stone Cold's fucking cool. I like Stone Cold. And I think Stone Cold's an ally, too. If I'm not mistaken. I think dude's like pro-queer. No, I don't think Trump is on Grindr. Trump doesn't strike me, to be honest. I think Trump only occasionally pretends to give a shit about queer issues, one way or the other, to win votes. But here's how I think Trump actually thinks about gay people. Can they make any money off of them? Same way he thinks about everybody else. You think Trump gives a fuck about a gay person? No. Not unless he can win votes from them or use them to win votes from somebody else. That's how far Trump actually cares about gay people. And I don't know if that's comforting or actually more alarming, right? Is it better that somebody hates you, or I'm sorry, is it better that somebody oppresses you out of a genuine sense of hatred, out of a misplaced but genuine sense of hatred? Or is it, easier to work with if they only do that as a way to appeal to a certain like violent and fanatical group within your country. I really don't know. I don't even know if that's one of those equations where it makes much sense to do lesser of two evils math. I live next to train tracks too. It can suck. Or I did for like 20 years of my life. Oh yeah, it does. Well, I mean, you kind of get used to it after a while, like me plugging my ears and shit. That is just a response I've had since I was a kid, because my mom, told me to do that when a train passes, just to protect my hearing, So I still hear the train fucking horn plenty loud, but it doesn't hurt, because like literally, I live so close to the tracks that it can physically hurt when the right horns come through. It can be a physically painful sensation. They're so fucking loud. And I get why they have to be. Don't get me wrong, I get why they have to be. Because not only do I live right next to a railroad, I live right next to a level crossing. So, I know, trust me, I know why they're important. He never suppressed us. He actually had Tori Amos stay in his suite and took care of her daughter. Are you kidding me? Well, I'm not saying he is currently oppressed gay people, although I consider trans people to be a part of the queer community, and Trump has definitely done several oppressive things to the trans community, and Trump is inarguably targeting the queer community more in rhetoric and through his administration. For example, allowing and tacitly encouraging states like Florida to not just um, uphold their unconstitutional law that effectively bans drag shows and shit like that, but to aggressively follow it, right? So they shouldn't even be like. I think a president that was actually interested in upholding the Constitution would be telling Florida, you have no right to demand like guest lists and all this other fucking shit out of people just based on the fact that they fucking hosted this kind of event or another kind of event. That is not That cannot be deemed criminal activity. That cannot be deemed to be part of a criminal investigation just in and of itself. Because that would be a First Amendment rights violation, right? But that's not what Trump's doing. And I think that kind of rhetoric and that kind of action is going to escalate. I think eventually he will be targeting us. And like I said, the question and then in our minds is going to be, is it out of real hatred or is it out of a sense of, like, I don't know, is it out of a real hatred or is it out of a desire to appeal to hard right voters? Stonewall never would have happened if it had not been for black trans women. May they rest in power. 100% true. Marsha P. Johnson, look her up. Well, I get what you're saying, orangutan, but like the reason why people bring up the heavy involvement of people like Marsha P. Johnson and their participation as activists and things like that is because they represent, even to this day, the most vulnerable example of the people, like the most vulnerable people in the queer community are by and large black trans women. I think at least that's part of the reason I think people bring their participation up. I don't know when drag queens became an enemy of conservatives. I never remember that being the case when I was a kid. I grew up with conservatives and they had no issue with them and showing me drag queens. Well, that's because the rhetoric has changed on them, right? There was actually a period in American history where we went through a bunch of liberalization and a bunch of fucking progressivism started to dominate American classrooms, American discourse, and everything else. Coincidentally, around the golden age of porn, And one of the things that was able to come out of this era of people being more honest with themselves and people being more willing to be openly expressive and shit was the drag movement, and drag performance I guess you could call it like a mass media thing, but as a thing that started to have mass appeal, right? and people's views changed on it. I mean, during the Reagan administration, people were very much anti-gay and anti-queer and everything, but even during the Reagan administration, in certain places, the tide started to turn. Throughout the 90s, people really started going hardcore on this. Get away from this fucking socially conservative bullshit. Get away from this, like, we got to reject this. And the cultural shifts that came along with that, I think, are what led drag to being kind of like re-examined by the conservatives. And really, if you think about it, it was during the 90s that the conservatives reassessed. It was like during the 90s and early 2000s that the conservatives reassessed their position on gay people broadly, where it went from gay people are pederasts and predators and trying to corrupt our children to, well, gay people aren't, there's nothing wrong with them. They're not, they deserve to be have a place in society, sure. They deserve to be able to be themselves, but why should they be able to get married just the way me and my wife can, And that's when the conservative position changed on gay people and drag as a concept for the most part. But that was back in the late 90s / early 2000s. And now the tide has turned yet again. And anti-gay rhetoric is back on the upslide. We're seeing more and more of it every year. It's becoming louder and more vociferous. It's being shared across more platforms. It's being normalized in more media spaces. So it's not long before you hear Trump spitting out some 80s Republican level propaganda about gay people or drag queens or whatever else. Not long. I don't like crediting Ellen because she ain't really the greatest example to lesbians. Yeah, no. Good old union busting, workplace torturer Ellen. Let's be honest, she really is the greatest example of lesbians because we're assholes. We can be anyway. Well, mostly I'm joking, but she actually had a rough start in her 20s. Her wife first. Well, yeah, no, I don't, like, that's the thing, right? I think Ellen, in her early career, her come up, I think there's a lot of admirable things about Ellen, and I think that that's probably what a lot of people who have a problem with Ellen have a problem with, is the fact that we kind of look at her as an example of a person who kind of betrayed her morals and the personality she put off, right? Because if you had asked me 5 or 6 years ago, is Ellen DeGeneres, is Ellen DeGeneres, is she like, union busting in her business? I would have said, no, fuck no. She's probably hiring SAG-AFTRA people to do what she needs them to do, and people from the adjacent technical unions and things like that. I would assume so. And if you'd asked me, does she regularly torture her employees? I would have said, no. But then I watched, in fact, I think it was actually an episode of Deep Fat Fried that I watched that just went over like a bunch of different things about Ellen. One of them was all the fucking juicy details of her union busting crap, which is my biggest problem with her, right? Because she just does not, like, she comes off as like a lib. And if you're a liberal or a leftist of any kind, why are you union busting? It's like the least lefty lib thing you can do. It's right up there with being just an outright conservative in my mind. So that was a bad spot in my mind with her. And then they started showing all these clips from her show from various times. And I guess when I was watching Ellen, this shit just passed me by and I never really thought about it. Ellen would constantly prank different people from her staff. And some of them seemed like they were cool with it and in on it, and others just seemed miserable. But you never really, you're just like, your brain doesn't treat it the same way when it just happens in passing. But when it's again and again and again, and you see the same people with increasingly dark and sad and depressed reactions in their faces, it's just like, God damn. This lady was monstrous with the people she had on her show. Not with the people she had on her show necessarily, but with the people working on her show. So, But I think as far as like public mass media representation of gay people, as far as like the average person and what they think about her, I think you're right in that way. I think that she is probably a lot of people's example of a lesbian, and a lot of people don't know all that other shit, and in that way I think it's a good thing, right? Because as long as you don't know that Ellen is actually a piece of shit, I'm okay with you thinking that Ellen is a good example of lesbians, because she's, as long as you don't know all that other shit, she's a kind of cheeseball, kind of assholey sometimes, but occasionally bordering on edgy, but like overall pretty agreeable, affable queer lady, right? If you don't know anything else about her, if you don't know anything about the background, if you haven't, like watched these compilations of her fucking with her staff and shit, then you don't come with all that baggage. And so I think it's okay that you have that association. But I think that the more you learn about Ellen, the more important it is to not look at her as like some example that the queer community needs to live up to, or something that we need to call out as a community. I think this idea that people need to be held accountable first by the group that they're a part of is retarded. It definitely is an art, especially a really good queen with strong jawline that knows how to work contour to make the appearance really convincing from 5 yards away. Oh, that is pretty cool. I didn't mean to say I completely like Ellen. I just said I don't completely like Ellen unconditionally. I just don't understand. Yeah, no, I get it. I'm not, I'm not arguing with you or anything. We're just having a little conversation about it, I'm not saying you personally. Don't hold her to account for those things. Ellen wasn't a bad lesbian. She was a bad boss and a dickhead. She shouldn't be criticized by any particular community, I think. Yeah, that's kind of my point, too. Post music. That's a really great way of putting it, too, is that Ellen wasn't any of the things that she was, like as a bad boss and all this other shit. She was not any of those things because of her lesbianness, and they don't reflect on that in any way. Oh, you're fine. You're fine, Amber. You're chill. Yeah, I agree with Post too. Yeah. Who would be a better, less terrible head of Doge, Musk or Ellen? Ellen for sure. Ellen, for all of her flaws, she strikes me as a person who actually knows how to run a business. Ellen had to fucking climb her way up. For all of her flaws, Ellen had to climb her way up in a way that Musk has never had to do. So Ellen has, like, she knows way more about what people actually need on the ground and what actually serves people on the ground than Elon Musk ever possibly could have. So I would say Ellen, hands down, obvious choice, obvious. It's like saying who's the best person to debate the most like skilled Christian theologist on the planet? A dog turd or TJ Kirk? It's like, well, fucking obviously TJ. It's, well, fucking duh, you know? At least TJ's gonna have arguments and shit. It's like, what does Musk know about cutting the fat out of the economy? What the fuck could Musk possibly know about cutting the fat out of the economy? He's a big part of the reason for the fucking fat. Him and his companies received billions of dollars in subsidies. Over the lifetime of his firms, they've received billions of dollars in subsidies. Yeah, everybody used to think of Elon as just that Mars guy, and really, dude, Elon Musk could have preserved that, dude. You know when it started to change for Musk? You know when Musk went from a dude that people kind of looked up to? Like, honestly, I would say for the first 10 years of Musk's notoriety as a person that you would occasionally hear, he was a name you would very, very, very occasionally hear. It was almost like hidden knowledge to know who Elon Musk was. I would say between like 2008 and 2018, give or take. But it was when he bought Tesla, that upped his profile more, and when he smoked weed on Joe Rogan's podcast. I don't remember exactly when that happened. I'm thinking it happened in 2018 or 2019. That was the first step. Dude, think about that. You guys want to think about that just for a hot minute? Just like let's really just lay it out for real for 1 second. You guys realize that was the moment, right? Historians, when they look at history and they examine the stories of what people wrote down and the ways things went, the tales that were told and all that, they look for these things that some people call fulcrum events, that, like turning points in history. You'll also hear them called points where something happened that led to things going a different direction than they would have went had that never happened. Had Elon Musk never smoked Joe Rogan, most of us wouldn't know who Elon Musk was. I genuinely believe that. I think that if Elon Musk had never smoked weed with Joe Rogan, that he would still be the obscure tech billionaire dude that he was for most of his fucking career. If I'll be honest, the only difference between me and you is I can't change my tattoos that are sleeved out of my arm. Bet that shirt is nice. I mean, I love this shirt. I've had it for five years, I think. Yeah, I'm like shocked at how well it's held up, but that's Torrid for you. Some of their stuff is just good. What can I say? It is a really cute top, though. For real, for real. I wonder if I have any more Dabberoonies in this other container. Let's check. Let's look. The answer, not really. Don't even get me started on Elon Musk. I mean, he left South Africa while the getting was good, huh? Yeah, he sure enough didn't he? Yeah, dude, like, motherfucker is the definition of Nepo baby, and Errol Musk is just as fucked up and weird as his son is. So it's not even like you can look at his father and be like, the good Musk, No, none of that. Nope. Not only that, but if we're going to be throwing around, not saying anybody in this chat has done it, but people nowadays love to throw around this rhetoric about illegals. If we're going to be throwing around rhetoric about illegals, I think it needs to be pointed out that Elon Musk is a fucking illegal. Oh, Stooges. It was fun while it lasted, but now you're banned. Because you couldn't think of anything smarter or better or more interesting to say than talking shit about me being fat. Motherfucker, everybody knows I'm fat. You're not the only human being with eyes here. You see these? You see these? Called eyes. You know what they do? They absorb visual information. I mean, seriously, you give us so much to go on and argue with. I love it. Well, that's the great thing about me is that I am a controversy-inducing figure. I can't help it. I always have been, even before I was out as trans. But now that I'm out as trans, it's even worse. Now that I'm out as trans, it's even worse. I think part of that's because I'm more confident in myself. I'm more confident in my ability to make my points, and I've done a lot more of it in the last 5 years. But I was always one of those people that would get people's eyes turning, heads turning at a lunch table or something like that. There's nothing wrong with being a good American that makes people think. That I can agree with. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of agreement to be found on these, for sure. I used to be bitter when I was like a kid because my cousins were assholes and I had to hang out with them. But once I hit middle school, I just changed. Well, the older you get, the less the petty grievances of childhood worry you, the older you get. It's one of the great things about getting older. It's one of the few redeeming things about actually like increasing in age is the fact that you kind of anneal yourself to that over time. You care less and less about it. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and get off here before I stay streaming for fucking 2.5 hours because I keep doing that and it's bad for my health. And I think it's actually hurting my performance lately. So I really am gonna call it quits here. Um, no, I'm gonna smoke one more cigarette with you guys, but then I'm gonna call it quits. We're gonna smoke. I'm gonna smoke a cigarette with you guys, and then we're gonna call it quits because I gotta fucking start going to bed earlier. And I gotta start hard time limiting myself. Yeah, don't forget to like the stream in these last few minutes if you haven't already. It really does help the channel. It really does tell YouTube, like, hey, this person's putting out good content. I want to see more of their content, and I think other people would like to see it as well. That's what you're telling YouTube with your like. So please consider leaving that like if you can find it in your heart to do so. This better be the longest smoke ever. I'm not ready to leave. I'm sorry, orangutan. It's got to be that way. It's just got to be that way these days. Life has changed. Life has changed, and I can't live like I used to. Like honestly, there are still times when I kind of hate that I can't, but it's just the fact of it. And it's better to accept truths that you can't change than it is to run from them. I do have to ask, how old are you? Because people that smoke instead of vape closer to my age. And how old would you assume I am? And yes, it's a recent picture. I would assume you're in your mid 30s to maybe early 40s. And as far as how old I am, I will be 27 this month. To be fair, I do vape normally, but my vape is kind of dying right now, and somebody gave me a pack of smokes because they switched brands, and so I'm kind of trying to smoke those instead of instantly going for the vape, so that I can make my vape last as long as possible. Because I can hit that one inside in a pinch, you know? I'm not even 40 yet. Well, I was saying mid 30s to like early 40s. So, am I right or am I wrong? Yeah, no, I don't think Amber is anywhere near 50s or 60s. Amber strikes me as a person pretty close to my age, but that, like she said, was raised by boomers and kind of like an older generation. And the reason I can relate to that is because I was too. My dad is literally, he was born in 1965, so he is like the last generation of boomers, you know? I mean, some people do just say that out of habit, honestly, Amber. There are definitely some people out there that are just kind of like fakey by nature. It, like, honestly, can I be honest with you guys? It took me a while to get used to the idea of, like, you know, I don't know. Even now, it sounds foreign and kind of assholeish to say, but, just because you want to be nice to everybody in your life and be like a little ray of sunshine doesn't mean you necessarily should all the time. Not because people will come along with the wrong idea about themselves. I love people to think better about themselves because thinking better about yourself is a great way to improve yourself. I mean, it really is part of the fucking equation. But because I think people start to believe it less if it's laid on them too much. I'm 38, but I feel 50 and look 28. That picture is a year old. I can't see your picture from here. I'm blind as a bat. Yeah, I've got glasses, but they're super old, so I can't hardly see the profile pictures of people in chat. But yeah, if you say you're 38, I believe you. That sounds about right. Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, you have the cadence of an elder millennial. Dude, the oldest millennials will be fucking 50 years old in 5 years. You know what song is stuck in my head right now? Two Faces Have I. Oh man, this is how I know I made a good decision in this being my last cigarette of the night, and then I'm fucking taking a couple dabs and going in. because I am getting into that mode, bro. I miss the road so goddamn much, but I cannot return to it anymore. That time in my life passed me by so fucking quickly. Sometimes I hated it, sometimes it was awful, but man, there was some shit I just miss, man. Other shit I don't miss, you know, but there's some shit I really miss. Yeah, that's just sad, Amber. I'm sorry. I can't imagine how lost you feel. Hug your loved ones, man. People get ready, there's a train coming. Don't need no baggage, just climb aboard. All you need is faith to hear the diesels coming. Don't need no ticket, just praise the Lord. Ooh, 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 ooh. So people get ready for the train to Jordan, picking up passengers from coast to coast. There will be no room for the rueful sinner who would kill all mankind just to save his own. Ooh, 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 ooh. I'm okay. 15 years of law enforcement kind of helped me. 21 years with my wife helped a lot, but losing my entire family and her in less than a year really sucked. But I made promises, so I'll be here. Yeah, I don't envy your position. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and go, y'all. Thanks for hanging out. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, do all that shit.